I can see my glorious globe, so either way though, there's not much else we can be able to actually go, apart from this particular moon itself, which we're able to actually hop into at this point. And at this point in time is that my globe somehow keeps on spinning and spinning and spinning, just like how it normally does it from my mini desktop globe, or in this case for this matter, from the scene from Toy Story the original, but even then, that's besides the point. Hey, what is up ladies and gentlemen, I'm Mario here once again, and I'm back for some more yet again for the likes of the Mercy Toys videos. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to more Let's Play of Super Mario Odyssey for the Nintendo Switch. So, last time we actually did completely done with every single part in Bowser's Kingdom, despite there's not much power moons to get, and especially noticeable with the final 10 of those regional coins that we've recently just found, and even then though we managed able to actually go for that specific stuff in some sort of a quicker recording session, so even then though, that's as far as I can usually think of. So yeah, today for this episode, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that we are going to be continuing things on and moving on to the next kingdom to 100% for everything, and that is of course the Moon Kingdom. Now, the good thing about this though is the fact that there aren't any of those regional coins to be found again, because otherwise though, then we've already gone through every single of those items specifically for the regional coins for, the Moon Kingdom. So we don't need to worry about this from now on, because the main focus of this particular kingdom as a result, though, is of course finding every single of those power moons. So even then, though, chances are we might able to actually find the rest of them, though, before we're able to actually move on to the next kingdom and such. So even then, though, not much else to really say about this, though, apart from there's quite a lot of things I just want to mention about this, ever since during the likes have been, the past few days ago at this rate, but even then, we'll talk more on that later, because for now, for this next mission right here, as you can see, we might as well able to actually use this little dog once again, and I think this will be, well, this wasn't necessarily the final time we're going to be doing this though. That belongs to the forms of, for the Mushroom Kingdom and such. So, relatively speaking, is that we need to once again guide the dog onto that specific spot, right where I'm presuming it's almost near to the forms of that particular timer challenge number 1, as if you can tell. And then that way we can able to actually guess about the fact that there's going to be a power moon somewhere across for that particular corner, and then if you do notice when the dog actually notices that specific glowing spot, then you get yourselves a power moon in the process. So even then, that's as far as I can usually think about it for the time. Although, generally speaking, that this will be the final time for the color-based power moons, if you couldn't tell. This might actually be the last of these different colored power moons we might as well able to get, because the final 3 kingdoms we're going to be focusing on, it wasn't until whenever we get to at some point in October, because I said this before. Originally, I was going to able to actually get back into this at some point in September, but I have to delay it for a little bit so that we can able to actually just get on with the actual other Let's Plays we are currently doing, as well as some of those Let's Plays we might actually focusing on at some point in September next month. So, generally speaking, that today's day is the forms of the 25th of August in 2019. So, relatively speaking, is that we pretty much almost towards the end of August already. So, even then, though, that relatively speaking, though, then there's not much else to really say about this, apart from the fact that with the forms of the Gamescom 2019 events that did recently happen during the likes of been, I would say for about 5 days ago, since the forms of the 20th of August. So, yeah, we'll run down with the forms of the actual Gamescom 2019 games they actually did manage to list upon, with the specific events they actually just managed to able to actually put up with specific news, updates, or anything like that. Well, I'm not going to mention about this too much, apart from the games I was really looking forward to, like, Luigi's Mansion 3, as well as The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening Remake, as well as Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020, and vice versa though, really. So even then though, yeah, that's as far as I can usually say about it. So even then though, as you can see on that particular mission, in a hole in a magma, we do need to utilize the para dry burns ever since in Super Mario 3D World, but except the fact that the biggest differences between Super Mario 3D World compared to this is that obviously we are going to be capturing those enemies, of course. So even though there's not much else to really say about this at this point. So, once again folks, I do apologize with the forms of the loud commentary going on right there, because once again, my old microphone is having a lot of issues recently because, well, it decides to cut out my dialogue or anything like that, which I always tend to hate that kinds of stuff though. But don't worry, when we get to 2020 and future things and onwards, then we could able to actually use the brand new microphone we are currently going to be using. So even then though, that way we could able to get ourselves a little bit of a more balanced commentary skills or anything like that. So relatively speaking, that makes it a little bit obvious for that point. So yeah, aside from all that though, let's just go to the forms of specific discussions, although we would mention about the specific stuff later on though, because from now on though, we need to mainly focusing on, I would say, the last mission we're going to be doing with in the actual magma section, because well, there are 2 of those power moons that we accidentally missed throughout the majority of the main run-through of that particular, well, you know, for that specific section. So even then, though, that's as far as I can usually say about this for this point. Now, we've already come across into one of them by the forms of using that pair of dry bones, if you couldn't tell. But another one which is going to be evolved around the actual, well, bonsai bill. And we need to go all the way to the cannon blaster on the right, as you can clearly see. And then ground pound onto that specific center part. And then that way you would get yourselves, of course, another power moon. So even then, though, that's as far as I can usually, you know, just trying to think about this for ourselves for this point. So, and relatively speaking, we are entirely done with that particular magma section. So even then, though, now we need to get the heck out of here. And, you know, just trying to do some more things here and there. So even then, though, I suppose that might be some sort of a little bit of a, well, coincidence choice for this point anyway, though. So, generally speaking, is the fact that with the forms of, oh yeah, I need to activate that specific, you know, checkpoint flag before anything else will happen. So even then, we're now onto the wedding hall, so we can able to actually get to there a little bit more faster than more than the forms of that particular ever after hill or something. So even then, that's as far as I can usually think about it. And we'll go ahead and deal with this next mission. And the fact of the matter is, though, is that not only do we able to do it not 1 but 2, or in this case not 2, mind you, but 3 missions that we'd like to able to do on this section. So of course, as you can see right here, we're able to actually trying to go after those moon shards on the actual church itself. So even then though, once again folks, I do apologize with the actual lack of dialogue for that point, just because there's not much else to really say about this for this point, I'm afraid. But until when it gets to the point, until future points and onwards though, we would mention more things and all that stuff. So even then though, let's just go up here, just in case if there are some moon shards around here. So once again, if you found all 5 of them, well, all the 5 shards, then basically the power moon itself has usually appeared. So yeah, it's relatively simple stuff though, really. But I highly recommend you're able to use the actual frog transformation or that specific capture the frog, so that way you could able to actually jump a little bit more ridiculously higher than he forms of how it does it on normal Mario himself. So anyways though, and right off the bat though, we actually come across into Princess Peach here. Wow, beautiful, our entire world right there in front of us. Well, at least as far as I can usually say about it, because, well, we're on space for the 3rd time, I'm presuming, for the 3D Mario game since Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2. But this time around, though, rather than just Luma's taking over for the actual space, but instead now it's actually by the forms of that specific church in the actual space itself. So, if you see that little information right there, this means she actually mentions there's going to be one last kingdom for able to actually meet up with her, and that is of course the Mushroom Kingdom. So that, relatively speaking, is that we're able to actually meet up with her for the final time when it comes to Peach in these kingdoms missions. So even then, hopefully we'll be done by then. So even then, there's the next hint art right here. So even then, we'll you know, capture that, so that way we could able to actually see if how the fact that there are some parts I need to able to actually just to briefly touch upon. And we'll practically come back to this later on though, because there are some more missions we'd like to able to actually just to go through. And in fact, the matter is though, is the fact that we pretty much almost done with you know, the Moon Kingdom itself. I know it's not that much when it comes to the forms of power moons alike, but I'm pretty sure we can able to actually just to gather even more power moons for the sake of beings. So once again though, we need to talk to the Spanx here, and I think this might actually be the last time, or actually let's use Rocket Flower, because if you couldn't tell for that ending cutscene right there, Mario did manage to able to obtain the rocket flower, so that way we can able to tell for that specific hints due to that cutscene alone. So we're not exactly done with the Spanx just yet though, because now we need to able to talk to him again, but this time around though with I would say by the forms of the final time we're gonna be doing with a quiz trivia challenges now. So even then though, if we're able to done with all these kinds of stuff like this, then we are practically done with all these question trivia stuff in Super Mario Odyssey. So even then though, let's just say no sheeps, because well, I can't see any sheeps around here, apart from the dogs, as well as the forms of the frogs, and as well as some rabbits, of course. So, because we've already technically saw these for that specific time. We're on the moon, so even then, though, that's because of how the fact that the answer is pretty obvious. The secret entrance is by, well, let's say just managed to able to go below from that particular section here. And of course, we have come across into our final section for that specific final question. Travel to the actual place. Is it, floating or just warped here? Oh wait, that's not right. I think what he meant to say is the fact that it's by, the floating airship. So even then though, that will be the correct answer. So, whoops, I managed to fail on that specific question at least once. So, but don't worry though, unlike the ones in how it does in New Donk City's Metro Kingdom when you talk to Pauline and such, you have to go all the way back to the very beginning of that question trivia until you're able to actually get all 4 of them right. But that's not the case on that specific Spanx question quiz or anything like that. So you're just able to actually continue where you left off before you're able to actually come across into several wrong missions here and there. So at least that's perfectly fine as far as I most likely can say about this for this point. So anyway, so before we continue things on with the Moon Kingdom, let's go ahead and activate that Moon Rock. In fact, fundamentally though, this is actually the final kingdom to able to utilize the Moon Rocks. So even then though, after this though, we are basically done with the Moon Rock challenges. And then after that, well, specifically whenever we get to the Mushroom Kingdom, as well as the Dark Side, and even a darker side, well, there's no need to able to actually deal with the forms of that specific Moon Rock challenges anymore. So even then though, relatively speaking, that's as far as I can usually think about it. So even then though, and relatively speaking as well, we're actually getting very, very, very close towards the end of this game as of now. So what the hell did I just manage to do that? Oh jeez, that was really bad luck for my ground pound skills right there. Well, good thing about it though is that the checkpoint or the saving respawning segments is actually like almost near to where the checkpoint is, or the midway point as far as I'm aware. But even then, we'll try this one again. So even then, hopefully for the better attempts this time around though. But we'll also see what happens there, if depending on my camera control or my depth perception, I should say. So, yep, that's all the things I can manage able to you know, discuss upon. So anywho though, so let's talk about the forms of that specific news stuff when it comes to the forms of news, announcements, or anything like that. Specifically for the Gamescom 2019, which so far, I'm actually kind of impressed about this, actually, is the fact that, first of all, let's mention about the forms of, well, specifically the closest release dates between the Nintendo games, specifically for, The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening remake first. First of all, they did discuss upon about the forms of, well, the continued progression point for specifically for the original Game Boy release of the Link's Awakening remake on that particular game. So even then, I'll explain more on that later, because for now, we need to carefully creep onto that. Oh, really? Oh, whatever. Oh well, we'll do a different mission here, such as like, specifically, that Koopa free running event. So even then though, hopefully we can able to actually just deal with these two, races here. So even then we're able to do that, while at the same time, I'm actually going to be discussing upon, some new stuff that's been added, specifically for Gamescom 2019, as I said before. Like, you know, they did, briefly mention about the forms of the customization, dungeon layout on Link's Awakening Remake, which appears to be some sort of a replacement of those, you know, the Game Boy Color exclusive features, specifically for the Game Boy printer functionalities, as well as the forms of specific stuff like that, which even then, I really don't mind about it too much, and it looks like I'm gonna fail right there, so I'm also able to retry that, so Yeah, definitely not recommend you do that though, so let's try that again. So even then though, yeah, I'm still looking forward to able to actually playing through The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening remake on my own time, so that way I can able to experience that on the go, just like the forms of how it does it on the 3DS's eShop Virtual Console version all over again, but this time around though with much more gorgeous HD visuals and all that stuff. Even then though, it managed to able to came out the exactly same day as Nintendo Switch Lite. So even then though, for those of you kids out there who are trying to experience the Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening remake, then more power to you, and it's kind of weird how the fact that most Nintendo Switch consoles managed to came out the exactly the same days as the Zelda games. Well, the only exception is of course the Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, because that game did came out in 2018, so... But no, as far as the forms of any other Nintendo Switch devices, like the actual launch 2017 version did manage to came out the exactly same day as, you know, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And now we have Nintendo Switch Lite is gonna come out on, you know, the exact same day as The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening remake. So, yeah, it's very surprising though, and I'm also very excited about that as well for that to top it all off. Anyways, before we get into the forms of the masterclass for specifically for Koopa 3 running stage on that specific Moon Kingdom, yeah, I forgot to mention about this mission right here, that if you couldn't tell, I'm actually going to be slowly creeping up for that specific mysterious UFO and stuff like that. This is by far, to me though, this is one of the most difficult stealth missions in the entire game in my opinion, just because, well, I was gonna go significantly slower, and I was gonna able to actually just to get a lot of emphasis on, you know, timing and everything, but most of the time, I just keep on getting screwing it over and trying to able to scare off the UFO. So generally speaking, that is by far is the most difficult stealth section, or in this case, that stealth mission in the entire game. So that's the reason why I'm gonna have to keep on keep on dying or keep on using those checkpoint flags all the time. So relatively speaking, it just makes it a little bit easier to able to make that specific, you know, obstacle respawn. So yeah, everything else will come to ghost for this part though, really. So even then though, yeah, that's for that part for The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening remake. The next thing they did mention when it comes to Gamescom 2019 is the fact that, whoa, that was really close. Anyway though, the next thing they just mentioned is the fact that there are some new stuff for Luigi's Mansion 3, which I'm not going to spoil things too much about it, but they at least did manage to able to add in the new area of the game, which appears to be inspired by the garden room and stuff like that. It kind of reminds me of that specifically the second mansion in Luigi's Mansion 2, but except the fact that, well, it's not so much for mission based anymore though, which I'm honestly kind of glad about that, because, well, mission structure is kind of like the exact same thing for how it does it in Sonic and the Secret Rings or Sonic and the Black Knight, when it comes to, like, mission structure and all that stuff, which I don't mind it on Luigi's Mansion 2, because you can play it on the go, on the 3DS, but on the other hand, though, I'm pretty much used to with Luigi's Mansion's, you know, exploration type of gameplay, like specifically the original Luigi's Mansion game, and I'm very glad that was the case on Luigi's Mansion 3, because, well, you know, compared to the second game, it's most likely gonna have to be, like, some sort of little bit of a different kind of gameplay or something like that, but I don't know. But even then, before I've seen the actual new, area they actually did added in on Luigi's Mansion 3, I was pleasantly excited about that. Sure, it might be a little bit too similar to the forms of Luigi's Mansion 2's, you know, for that particular, forest, mansion as far as I'm aware. But regardless of such, what makes it a little bit better is that it was now in HD and stuff. So, at least even then, I'm very happy about that specific stuff though, really. And, I suppose the third and the final game I just want to point out for Gamescom 2019, which I was really excited about. Now is the fact that we actually got ourselves more information about Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020. So, even then though, for the Nintendo Switch, of course. So, first of all, let's mention about the forms of something new they actually added in. Stuff like, for instance, they actually bring back the Dream events, like we've already know about this since E3 this year. Like, it only has like 3 of them, sadly, though, just like the ones that how it does it in, you know, the dual events from the likes of the Rio 2016 Olympic Games. However, though, I will say, they're most likely, to me, far more better than the forms of how it does it on these dual events from, 2016. Well, don't get me wrong, I don't hate the game, it's just that it just feels kind of like bare bones compared to the forms of how it does it in Sochi 2014, we were especially noticeable with the superior titles for, Nintendo Wii games, specifically the original Winter Olympic Games, as well as the London 2012 Olympic Games, because as far as I'm aware, both the Vancouver 2010s, oh, sorry, I hit the microphone, I do apologize for that, yeah, with the Vancouver 2010 as well as London 2012 Olympic Games, they're most likely superior to play just because, well, they added in a lot more content, like specifically added in, Olympic events that we're all familiar with, as well as some of these Winter Olympic events, which I was pleasantly excited for, especially in Vancouver 2010's case. Because, honestly, out of all the Dream Event selections in the actual series, in the entire series so far, I think to me that both London 2012 and the forms of Vancouver 2010 does have the best selections of these Dream Events, which, sure enough in Tokyo 2020 though, it only has like only 3 of them, which I was a little bit, disappointed by that, but luckily for me though, they are usually kind of fun though, for I've seen the actual trailer of the game, or in this case the Japanese overview trailer, which the environment is going to take place in, thankfully though, the actual Mario and Sonic environment is actually now finally back in action, but this time around though is going to be most likely takes place in the recent Mario and Sonic game, which is specifically for, well, first of all there's Dream Shooting, which is usually going to take place in somewhat in the China or Japanese based environment or something. But if I've played it, or if I've seen the actual gameplay footage of it, it kind of reminds me of Splatoon a little bit, but except the fact that with the Mario and Sonic characters, so at least even then I might be curious to able to see how this will turn out. However though, when it comes to the other 2 Dream events, which there are Dream Racing as well as Dream Karate, Dream Karate is going to take place in Super Mario Odyssey's Mushroom Kingdom, because if you can tell with the overview trailer, it did showcase off the actual event of Dream Karate, as well as from that though, they did show off the Odyssey ship, as well as the forms of the Peach's Castle itself, and I was like, wow, I'm actually very pleased about that actually, and sadly I just accidentally died for that specific gravity right there. Because yes, in this particular section right here, as you can see, it's going to take place entirely in 2D, because, we need to be able to traverse through gravitation when it comes to the forms of, like, jumping from planet to planet. So, well, specifically for, moving platforms, I'm aware. So, even then, I will admit though right away for this point, folks, I do apologize with my commentary. It's going a little bit sappy for this point today. Well, don't get me wrong, I'm very hyped about the forms of the Gamescom events at the moment, just because I was pretty excited about those 3 games at the moment. Well, some of these missing aspects though, which there are, well, we already know about Spyro Reunited Trilogy though, because obviously that plays out exactly the same as the original PlayStation 4, as well as the Xbox One version, but except the fact that it can play on the go, on the Nintendo Switch. I don't know if the lighting effects were able to improve upon than the likes of how it does it in Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, or in this case, for this matter though, with Crash Bandicoot's lack of fur on that particular Nintendo Switch version, but we'll see what happens during at some point in next few days actually, specifically 9 days to go until, the 3rd of September, which recently I did manage to pre-order that game though, so that I can able to actually play on the go, as well as from that, I can able to actually utilize my my Nintendo Gold points, so that way I could able to actually spend upon discounted price for specifically for dropping price for some of these eShop games on the Nintendo Switch and what have you. So I actually get away from that, as well as some occasional DLC content here and there. So even though that's as far as I can usually just try to able to describe it from it. So anyways, back into what I was saying with the Super Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020, when it comes to Dream events. As I said before, the Dream Karate event is going to take place in Super Mario Odyssey's version of the Mushroom Kingdom, which is actually pretty cool. Like, you can able to see the actual Odyssey ship itself, as well as Peach's Castle itself. The only thing is missing, though, is of course the actual, well, I'm not going to spoil things just yet, though, because, well, I haven't really, got to the point of continuing for this game for quite some time at this point, so, but, relatively speaking, when it gets to the point until at the very end of the year, I can able to actually definitely finish up with this game. It's at some point, when the next 3D Mario game will be announced at some point in the future, though. But, you know, we'll just see what happens there. So even then, though, specifically for either the Nintendo Direct or something like that, but then again, it's a super top secret. So even then, though, that's as far as I can usually just, you know, always trying to say when it comes to specific announcements in Fury, if only if they're super top secret and stuff. So even then, I just want to point things out. So, anywho though, and as far as Dream Racing, as far as I'm concerned, it's going to take place in the forms of the recent Sonic game at the moment. Specifically, sadly not Sonic Mania though, because that game utilizes in 2D gameplay aspect, but more accurately though, Sonic Forces in Metropolis level. So even then though, specifically in when you get towards the end of specifically on Sonic Forces game. So even then, I'm actually kind of excited about that actually. But I think it's going to utilize this skateboarding aspect, which usually you have to go all the way down to the actual racing course or the racing track, which I'm actually going to be pretty excited about that event, alongside with the forms of Dream Karate. And I'm pretty sure Dream Shooting is going to be some sort of a new experience for me though. Well, at least we'll find things out whenever that game's gonna come out. And speaking of which, between the forms of these 3 different countries, at least ever since back in the 3DS days, or even the Wii U days, they did manage to able to offer us a different release dates between all 3 of those regions all throughout. Like, for instance, the Japanese version is gonna come out on the 1st of November, so that's gonna come out first. Because, you know, Tokyo 2020 is going to take place in Japan for, you know, the Olympics stadiums, of course. But as far as the rest of the other countries, though, specifically for the American version, is going to come out on the 5th of November. And finally, by the forms of our country, specifically for our UK audiences, it will about to be due out at some point in 8th of November. So, relatively speaking, actually, you know, in the forms of how the fact that 6 years ago, that we did at least manage to have ourselves Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games that came out in, specifically in the UK version, in the 8th of November in 2013. But now in 6 years later, we now have ourselves Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020, around exactly the same day of the releases actually, for the 8th of November. But the major difference is of course the different year, so at least even then it makes it a little bit different. So, but even then, I'm really looking forward to that though, and I'm definitely gonna have to pre-order that, because whenever I manage to see the actual overview trailer so far, I'm actually gonna be pretty excited about this, more than the forms of how it does it in Rio 2016. Well, usually, sadly though, for Rio 2016 at the very end, I just think that game is kind of like my first least favorite games in this series now, because, well, why this able to actually took away the most important aspect with the every single series at this point, since the Wii generation, which is of course the motion controls. But somehow in Rio 2016, they just seems to remove that. So that's kind of a shame though, really. But at least on the upside though, with the new characters, that certainly does manage to able to help the sales slightly, but I don't know exactly for 100% guarantee by that kinds of stuff. So anyway, so the next missions, as you can see right there, we are once again gonna have to able to walk onto the forms of that specific shape, but this time around though on the moon. So even then, and once again we have to do this twice. So the first attempt, or the first part, is not too bad though. Like, we need to able to get up to 80 points, and that's pretty much about it. However though, when it comes to the second part, well, we need to reach up to about 90 points. But here's the most difficult part about this, is that, you know, these little ramps, especially noticeable with the actual depth perception, as you can see, they're ridiculously overly pointy and such, and also as a result, if you want to able to get onto this very, very simple straight line, you have to able to perfectly try to maneuver with your analog stick very carefully, and to top it all off, you need to work with the camera controls as well. So relatively speaking, this is generally the more difficult walking on the certain spot missions. So, but hopefully though, we can able to do this for a second attempt, and let's see how the results are even slightly better. So let's see. Oh, really? 1 point off! 1 freaking point off! Oh, that's a bit disappointing. Oh well, we'll try this one again. So, let's see how this goes. Okay, if you do notice by this point, this is actually a massive jump cut, because this took me 20 attempts. Because you don't know why? Yeah, remember I mentioned this before about this beginning part with that little bit of the ramp, as you can see right there, or the slant that you have to work with? Well, it feels kind of messed up when you're trying to able to walk so slowly. But as a result though, my shape has always gone off-road, and especially noticeable with that specific pattern. But if you try to maneuver that extremely carefully, especially noticeable if like I just did right here, if you manage to reach up to like 90 points to be exact, then you will get yourselves a power mode. So yeah, definitely a lot more harder than the forms of how it does it on the previous walking on missions. So even then though, that's yeah, definitely a lot harder than the forms of how it does it from before. But then again, it took me about 20 whole attempts to able to actually accomplish with that stuff. So even then, I just cannot even believe it took me so many minutes or so many hours to able to actually complete that mission. So even then, that just really kind of nerves from my experience anyway. So anyways though, let's just get back into the forms of the actual discussion with the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020. They also bring something new to the table, which appears to be some sort of another Tokyo Olympics thing, but it was actually a extra mode by the forms of specifically extra amount of events. Specifically, the Tokyo 1964 mode, which what that actually represents is the fact that we're actually going back to the past since 1964, which I think is actually a pretty swell idea, because it kind of reminds me of Sonic Generations a little bit, but except the fact that, well, you're actually going back into its old school sprites or anything like that, which is specifically based off from the original Super Mario Bros. Game for the NES, derp, and as well as the forms of some Sonic the Hedgehog games, to be more specifically the Mega Drive era, because, you know, the sprites usually represents with, you know, the Sonic the Hedgehog games from the old school days, like specifically from Sonic 1, Sonic 2, as well as Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles. The only exception is, of course, Sonic CD, because there was like some sort of like a different game compared to the forms of Sonic 1, because of all this level design is actually a little bit more, well, some sort of like a color palette mess or something like that. Well, I don't know why I truly say that, mind you, but So anyways though, as you can see on screen, we are practically going to be doing the next mission, which basically we need to carry this frog, or in this case take the frog, all the way to that one particular spot. And you know what the actual moon gravity we need to work on with? Well, usually for frogs, is actually way more jumps higher than Mario himself. So naturally speaking, we need to make onto that specific spot, just onto that particular platform over there, just dodge those bottomless pits, and then that way you can able to actually jump extremely higher, and of course you get yourselves the next power moon. So even then though, wow, just managed to dive right into it. So yeah, it's pretty swell if you ask me. So yeah, and there's also another thing is one to pointing out when it comes to that particular game for Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020, is the fact that, well, unfortunately, it's to say, the character roster might be exactly the same as the previous games since Vancouver 2010, which I know some people seem to say they're getting kind of sick about that, but let's just hope that the extra playable characters might actually add into the actual replayability. Especially noticeable that, well, they did at least added in Zavok since the E3 trailer, but on the other hand though, they did manage to add in Eggman Nega to that specific point, but don't know if those two are going to be playable just yet though. But then again, we'll see what happens on the final version of the game, or specifically for some other playable demos or something like that. Yeah, I still can't even believe I seriously keep on getting screwed over by that stupid little stealth mission, as you can see right there, because again, you have to be so damn precise with your analog stick, as well as the forms of that specific cappy throwing stuff. So even then, that's as far as I can usually represent with. So now you're probably wondering why we're going back into this wedding hall, because if you dressed up as Dr. Mario, and if you talk to this little NPC right here, then you get yourselves what else? Another power moon. So even then, Doctor in the house. So yes, because, you know, I'm a Dr. Mario, of course, especially noticeable that the most recent Dr. Mario game has recently came out on the iPhone devices, specifically for the Android and the iOS version. So even then though, that I haven't got far into it though. Well, at least I've already got into World 2 so far. So even then, because, well, you know, with the forms of the microtransactions they managed to add in, well, I'm not exactly sure if I was going to be felt like playing it all day because of microtransactions just keeps on, like, distracting me most of the time. Well, usually it's what I say about it, but either way though, yeah, that's as far as I can usually describe it for that. So let's just hope we can try this, you know, mission again, and this time around though for a much more better attempt than the forms of how it does it from last time. So hopefully I could able to make it for this point. Come on. Come on. Booyah! There we go. Eat that, you son of a gun. Anyways though, so mysterious flying object. Yeah, mysterious flying object can kick my ass. Well, I won't say it for this much though, because, well, I just don't want to able to say that in front of you kids out there, because, well, I just really can't refuse to able to actually say these languages for this time, because, well, I remember that one particular game just really ticks me off though, and that was Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, because, you know, that game is incredibly glitchy and all that stuff. But let's, you know, not talk about that game anymore though, because I did manage to play this on my own time. And that is the main prime example of how the fact that the Sonic Boom Marathon selections of Let's Plays is officially cancelled for this year, because, you know, so many complications with our recording sessions or what have you, so that is a prime example of how the fact that that's the reason why we just, you know, couldn't do so well with the Sonic Boom series as of lately, so anyways, so let's deliver about, like, quite a few power moons for this point here, and we now reach over about, oh, almost there to the forms of 800, so at least even then we actually reach up to, like, 781, so at least even then we're pretty much almost done here, so even then let's head back into the forms of the Wooded Kingdom, so that way we can able to find the next power moon in the forms that are specifically for the Moon Kingdom, so and of course, we do need to utilize the actual checkpoint flags to begin with, while at the same time, I'm also able to talk over more details about that specific game I was talking about. The next thing they did added in is, for the first time ever in the console Mario and Sonic in the Olympic Games kind of gameplay or something like that, they now finally have a story mode in a console Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games console game. So even then, it's about freaking time, actually, because even then, technically, Festival Mode was a single-player experience, which I will say, though, it is true, but it doesn't add that much story variety, so you just have to go for a serious amount of matches and the occasional rivals you have to come across into. But most of the time, though, it's just, you know, you have to go for a serious amount of events and all that stuff. Similar applies to how it does it on, you know, Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games, as well as Rio 2016 Olympic Games on the Wii U. But even then, that's besides the point. So I'm very glad the story mode was a thing in Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games for the first time in the forms of in a console Mario and Sonic game, as the, well, technically for another time for a handheld game, so yeah. Okay, I did another jump cut, as you can tell, for this point, because I'm actually on the wrong section, because it turns out we need to go all the way down there, right next to where the scarecrow is, but of course, since my long jump wasn't exactly cope with me very well, so unfortunately for me, I can't seem to able to do that while the fence is actually blocking my specific long jump. But on the other hand though, whenever we go to this point right there, and you should able to make it for this point no problem, so even then though, that's as far as I can go. Yeah, with that all that in mind, and the forms of that specific story mode in mind, with Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games for Mario and Sonic, I think for that particular story is going to be a huge emphasis on time traveling this time around though, which unlike the forms of how it does it in Vancouver 2010 on the Nintendo DS, they managed to able to, like, well, Bowser and Dr. Eggman managed to able to actually melt the snow completely, so they just managed to cancel the forms of that particular Winter Olympic Games on purpose, and it's up to Mario and Sonic to able to save these little frosty spirits and all that stuff, and to able to restore the actual Winter Olympic Games for good. And on London 2012 Olympic Games on the 3DS, which I will say, London 2012 Olympic Games actually has the best story out of all the every single Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games for that point, is the fact that Dr. Eggman and Bowser managed to able to cover up the fog in the actual London. So even then, because they just want to also cancel out the Olympic Games and all that stuff, and it's up to Mario and Sonic and Tails and Luigi of all things to able to stop Bowser and Dr. Eggman for ruining the forms of the London Olympic Games. And as far as Rio 2016 is far as I'm aware, most notably with Road to Rio, basically, it's just your main character just best able to actually investigate on the specific stuff, which I will say, the story's nothing too special about it on Rio 2016, sadly, but hey, at least on the upside though, until, Tokyo 2020, they did at least manage to add in quite a few number of things, specifically for time travel aspect, so even then, we're not going to explain things too much about it, details, I'm afraid, because we are basically done with the forms of the Moon Kingdom. So even then, only three kingdoms to go, which are essentially, Mushroom Kingdom. And speaking of Mushroom Kingdom, that's exactly why I was going to explain about this, because, this inspires the actual events from Dream Karate in Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020. So even then, I'm super excited about that. So anyways though, before we end off this video actually, let's go ahead and change into somewhat a little bit more retro old school, such as like, well, we'll be able to actually go back to the past for Super Mario 64 style. So even then, we're able to actually dress up like that. So, yeah, I guess we're able to end things off here. So join me or tune in until likely in October next time on the forms of Super Mario Odyssey, is that we are returning back into the Mushroom Kingdom and do a lot of more things. So even then, I'll see you guys until October. So even then, because, it's going to be a little bit of a delay, because, we'll be able to actually leave at that. So see you guys then. Later, fellas.